Okay, you're live and unmuted.
Okay. Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Community Board 2's 100% virtual Traffic and Transportation Committee meeting for January 27th. We have a big agenda tonight. We primarily going to be talking, we have 3 agenda items. I'm going to move the second one to the third because the first and second are similar. We'll first talk about improving some of the changes that we see on West 3rd Street between Mercer and LaGuardia Place on the northern side of the NYU superblocks. Then talk about safety improvements on the southern side on Bleecker Street. And then we'll talk about what some improvements that the city has added at Morton Street, just off of 7th Avenue South, where a woman was killed last November while she was walking in the pedestrian crosswalk. So just want to, we have 11 attendees and we have our panelists here. I just want to introduce everyone on the committee and then we'll go over some ground rules and then we can get into it. I'm Janine Kiley, the chair of the Traffic and Transportation Committee. And turn it to Janet.
Hello, Janet Liff, vice chair of the committee.
Okay, and I'm just going to ask everyone to raise their hand. I'm going to go by how I see Dan Miller.
Public member, Traffic and Transportation, longtime community board member, past. Thanks.
Yeah. Susan.
Hi, Susan Gammy, full board member of this committee.
Rocio, then Stella. You're muted, Rocio. Yeah, so it's okay. Stella, just raise your hand. Anthony Wong, raise your hand. Dr. Shirley Smith is a member of Community Board 2 and lives on the superblocks. Our chair emeritus, Shirley Secunda.
Oh, emeritus, great.
Emeritus.
Full member of the committee.
Yes, and we have Joseph, Joe Flahaven. I'm mispronouncing your last name. And from DOT, we have Kate Shear. So we're gonna just go through, I'm just gonna go through some current conditions. We had, CB2 had planned a walkthrough earlier today with NYU and the 6th precinct, and it became a virtual walkthrough due to the weather conditions, but we're all very familiar with this location because it's right next to our community board office, and many of us also live close by, including Carter Booth, who just joined us as well. So as we go through, and just in the chat, and maybe Mark, you can put these back in again in like 10 minutes. We have 3 past CB2 resolutions on West 3rd Street, one in 2017, one in 2018, and another one in 2022. A lot of these changes that we advocated for were implemented during COVID. And there's the good and the bad and the new that we want to discuss tonight. I'm just going to share my screen so we can, advanced portion of screen, share. Let's go to, oh man. Why is this not working? Okay, there we go. Sorry. This is not what I want. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay, let me get this screen. So we want to talk about improving safety on West 3rd and Bleecker Streets. Thanks to Ben Listman on our committee, who took a lot of these pictures this weekend in anticipation of us not being able to actually be out there. You can see this is a picture of the bike lane. You can't really tell, but to the left of the bike lane was an extended sidewalk. It's supposed to be a slightly different color, and you can see it's a slightly different color than the street, but not marginally different. And it's been used for parking. I'm going to just show the next slide. These are just a few more pictures. Because of the was essentially become 2 lanes of parking around a bike lane. It's hard to see. Cars cut through the bike lane to pull into Washington Square Village, and the extended sidewalk, you'll see cars pull out of the extended sidewalk into the bike lane, just causing, the whole goal here was to improve safety. So basically there were 3 resolutions that are linked in the chat. The good news, the biggest safety improvements have come from the addition of a signal and crosswalk at Wooster Street and some speed bumps, as well as a dedicated bike lane, and that's fantastic. But we have some unintended consequences. The extended sidewalk on the south side has no maintenance partner, and it's become used for parking. The 6th precinct has ticketed, they have towed, but there's regular people, residents who park here, but given the proximity to NYU and Soho shopping, you have a lot of people who are unfamiliar with the area. And the signage can be very confusing. The dedicated bike lane is used by vehicles. You have cars looking for parking on the extended sidewalk, cars turning into Washington Square Village 2 and 4, or just avoiding traffic on the street and driving down the bike lane to get to LaGuardia. And then we also see trucks loading and unloading. There's no daylighting at the crosswalk or the entrances to Washington Square Village 2 and 4. It makes it really dangerous for pedestrians, cyclists, and cars to see each other. There's no space for maneuvering large delivery trucks that come in and out of Washington Square Village. And there was supposed to be floating parking near the NYU BOPS library loading docks. Those have not been blocked out. So it makes deliveries difficult for large trucks and will cause, when these delivery trucks can't make turns, they make a wide turn, and then there's traffic backups, which compounds with cars driving in the bike lane, which is never good. And a lot has changed since 2017. There's no design for micromobility. I'm sure everyone has seen the Amazon bicycle box trucks going around. There's no dedicated loading zones. There's no dedicated delivery hubs. And we did ask for a crosswalk on Greene Street, but we never got it. So I'm gonna, sort of what are the options? The options are, the question is, what can we do to fix this? And we also have Anita Brandt on, another resident on the super blocks, and Katie Bordenero. So thank you, many community board members. So I just want to open it up to first to committee members, then community board members to sort of and if the committee members who were on a call earlier, just sort of highlight your general thoughts on what we should do to improve this, just a quick recap, and then we'll go to listen to the people from the public who are on tonight. So raise your hand if you would like to say. Shirley?
Yeah, I won't say too much, but based on what we discussed in our meeting this afternoon, and one of the points that you made, I think is the most salient one, is that approaches to street improvement have changed and needs have changed. And then I thought that Carter Booth, who attended the meeting earlier, made a very good point, which was that their streets are different. And this is a really different street that has some very unusual demands and conditions. And it really calls for a rethinking and a redesign. And I think I'll stop there and see what everybody else says, because we did go over some of the things that we think are needed there now. But I think this was really the salient thing. The design in the first place did not even answer all the conditions then. Conditions have changed and methodology has changed. So we really have to rethink, I think, for a totally new plan.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other committee members who want to? Janet, Susan?
I completely agree with what Shirley just said, but I'd also like to talk for a moment about what Officer Can from the 6th Precinct brought
Thank
to
you.
our earlier meeting. So perhaps, Janine, you could say a couple of words about that. And I would like to just say that I thought his very pragmatic suggestions were really meaningful.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
I think that however we look at this, the combination of, a kind of boots or wheels on the ground that um, Officer Can suggested in combination with a kind of reimagining that Shirley just mentioned is the way to go here.
Yeah. So Officer Can said basically if we stick with the current design, we really need to visually delineate the extended sidewalk with red or zebra stripes because frankly, the gravel color is too similar to the street and it's very unclear that it's not meant for parking. But frankly, his, another idea was painted murals, but his preference was really a protected bike lane at the curb and basically doing something like that he thought was just better. They can ticket as much as they want, but the design has to be something that can stand on its own because at the end of the day, I mean, for example, he joined us today for a virtual walkthrough, but then he had to go because the 6th Precinct is dealing with ICE protests, and usually there's something else that pulls them off. And so we need something consistent that does not require daily enforcement to work in the community. So that was sort of the 6th Precinct's major view on this. I'm gonna go to Janet.
I apologize, I got disconnected. So what would you like from just some comments on the
Yeah,
direct?
just in general, big picture, what you would like to see.
Okay, I think there are elements of the existing plan that are good. But it would not be complicated to actually switch. I mean, the crux of it is that there's no need for additional sidewalk space, so we'd have to kind of gerrymander, like, how do we keep cars out of that? So if we did the bike lane adjacent to the curb and then did a very large buffer next to the bike lane, we've got plenty of space to do a nice double wide bike lane, and then there's a lot of opportunities of things that we can actually do in that buffer, such as micro mobility hubs. Janine was talking about the numbers of, we have so many more cargo bikes now. We could have cargo bike pick up and drop off. Like, we could very creatively use the space adjacent to the bike lane. And I wouldn't encourage us radically altering the width of 3rd because it keeps the cars moving slowly. And the trick on 3rd Street is really, again, addressing the parking around Bobst.
Yep. And providing enough space for big trucks to make turns.
Yeah. I mean, that's the issue, not allowing for double parking.
Yes. Okay. And just to clarify, there's one lane of traffic as you head west past LaGuardia Place. So there really is no need to have a second lane on the block, just to have a little bit more space for large vehicles to maneuver and not create traffic backups when they're making Y turns. I'm going to go to Anita Brandt, who's a community board member and lives on the super blocks.
Yes, can you hear me? This is the first
Perfectly.
time. Okay, great. Well, I do live there and I do drive to the garage there, and I have to do a whole loop-de-loop because of the up and down ramps. And I think one of the things that surprises me in a good way is that the traffic really does go slowly. It's not like usually they pop out of that light at Mercer Street and then they, gangbusters until they hit LaGuardia. That's no longer the case. But the biggest issue is really poor visibility. And that is the key to a safe pedestrian and bike and car, because you cannot see when you're turning into the Washington Square Village buildings. You have to stop everyone behind you to turn in, and you have to wait until, especially these really fast motor scooters fly by. So even though somehow everybody's slowing down, that helps, except the bike lane. They're not slowing down. So perhaps it would be best if we could get that further away from the parked cars, just so you can see them.
Okay.
So that would be my suggestion.
Thank you, Anita. Carter?
Hi, so I was on the call earlier, and one of the things that I had mentioned is that the goals, what were the goals that were trying to be accomplished here? And the biggest change wasn't actually some of the recommendations that we made. It was the traffic light being put in, because that stops the traffic in the middle of the block. And it really does make a difference, because the crossing where the crosswalk is 100 times safer. And going through the space between, I call it the breezeway. I don't know. It has whatever name that is. That's the opening next to Bob's Library. And the thing that this is a stretch of a protected bike lane for the length of one super block, and that's it. The rest of the bike lane here is shared with the traffic. So it's introducing an element that's actually not safer, because there's so many moving parts. And the reason there's so many moving parts is because of the nature of the super block, which is these 4 very large apartment buildings. And then to the north, the institutional uses that NYU has. And the street width has been narrowed to the width of a sort of a West Village street, which doesn't really reflect how that space was traditionally used. And right now, it creates a lot of issues with trucks stopping, confusion, and even not being able to see the space to the south where the bike lane is kind of like the same width as the traffic moving lanes. It's a lot of confusion in this very small area, and that confusion contributes to the not having safety, because it's not predictable, and there's a lot of moving parts going on. So I think that what Detective Cam from the 6th Precinct had said, which was having the protected bike lane up against the curb or closer to the curb, really is a good solution, because it would, if the width of the travel lane was widened a bit, there'd be more room for some of the commercial activities, the trucks that back into the loading docks. There'd be more room if somebody just stopped momentarily. It's the back entrance to the stern. Anything that's happening, it allows some movement past it instead of great confusion and chaos. And the predictability to me is what's important, because nobody knows what they're supposed to do when they get to any of these engagement points or coming in and out of the driveways. But the traffic light timing there can address a lot of the speed to some extent. But the other reality, and Janine, you'd mentioned it this afternoon, is there's a large jazz club, the world-renowned jazz club that's moving in where the Aristides used to be. So there's going to be some different car activity going on, and pickups and drop-offs and blocking streets, and just, the things that that are part of the village, right? But we've left no room for these activities to occur in a reasonable way. We're sort of treating this like it's some drag racing strip, when it's actually is a confluence now with the new jazz club, all these uses that we have in our area. It just doesn't seem to be addressing it and working. And I know we had another meeting where, some of the residents in the building said it's all this horn honking that goes on all the time. And that's symptomatic of the traffic being stopped and nobody being able to move around. So I don't know, it's an introduction of something in a 1 block length that doesn't quite seem to be working. And I don't think it takes into account these large apartment buildings that we have here and the institutional uses that NYU has. And so it seems to be that there's some created hardship. So I think it just needs, like Shirley had said, we just need to revisit this and make it work better for everybody. But most importantly, our local users. And the local users are the institutional use, the people who are biking around, like all and any of us who use that, and the people who live there and are crossing the street. And we also have the new introduction of Paulson, with all the residential uses going north and south and crossing. So there's a lot of changes that have happened, but the stoplight itself has made it much, much safer. And I don't think we ever contemplated that. So.
Fantastic. And that the stoplight wasn't part of our original plan. It just showed up, and it's probably been the biggest improvement. Do we have any other comments or questions from CB2? Otherwise, we'll go to the public members. Okay. If you could, if you like to speak and share your thoughts, please raise your hand and we will allow you to speak, or promote you to a panelist so we can see your face. I also shared in the chat a link to the slides that I presented earlier for those of you who may have joined late. We now have a total of 31 people and 14 attendees. We have our first person, whoops, somebody's already promoting her, correct? Amy Klon.
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Hi.
Thank you so much for letting us speak, and thank you for your thoughtful comments and all the time for the committee. I'm a 20-year resident in the Superblock, and I think I agree with the comments that the speed and the visibility as a pedestrian are what are vastly different now. The light has helped with automobile speed, but bicycles have become so much faster. There's also mopeds and motorcycles in that lane. And it is really a death trap that there's no visibility and they do not abide by the traffic light. So we, as a pedestrian trying to cross there, we have very little recourse. And the blind spots created by the floating parking are really extraordinary. So it does sound like some of your suggestions and proposals will address this and make it safer for us.
Thank you. Does anyone else from the public, if you want to comment, please raise your hand. I know there's a number of people on here. Oh, I just want to share, we have Nicole Barth from Councilmember Eric Botcher's office and Valentine Goldstein from NYU on as well. Nicole or Valentine, do you have any comments or additions? I know, well, actually, it's no longer in Eric's district, so. Sheila, and then we'll go to Tim. Okay, won't go first for Sheila. And you're welcome to turn your camera on or not, whatever your preference is. And you'll need to unmute, Sheila.
Oh,
there you are.
Oh,
All
great. I have computer problems at the moment. I would just like to propose a quick solution in terms of safety. Cars exiting Washington Square Village to Washington Square Village, where I've been a resident for 60 years, have a terrible blind spot. They cannot see oncoming traffic. And I note that on the corner of Mercer Street and West 3rd, there are about 13 bike racks. They've never had more than 3. Most of the time it's 2 bicycles or a motorcycle there on a regular basis. Most of the time they're empty, they're not used. I would suggest to open up a sight line from the driveway at number 2, which would help incoming traffic find the driveway as well, and instead of having to make a hard left turn, is if we just exchange the position of the bike racks with the parking spaces. If we remove the bike racks from these south side curbs at the corner of Mercer, put them where the entrance is, and remove just 2 cars to open the sight lines, put them where the bike racks are currently, and then put the bike racks in place of the automobiles.
I think that's a great.
Open sight lines, it could be done quickly. It doesn't have to have a whole redesign. When we get to redesign, I think the bike lanes would be better on the north curb, on the north side of the street. There are not that many deliveries. Having observed this over the years, there are no driveways on the north side of the street. Not that many deliveries that come into Stern via that way. There are no loading docks. It's a much more secure area on the north side, and the south side is where we have trouble with on the bike lane. We've got garbage trucks driving, delivery vans, people looking for parking. It's created a tremendously dangerous situation. As we know, we lost a life there. Anyway, that's all I have to say. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for listening.
Okay. We'll go to Tim Dressler.
Hi, thank you. So first of all, thank you so much for this forum. It's great to be able to speak. I agree with like the police officer's original description of putting the bike lane close to the curb would probably be the most helpful. I don't see what the need was for the expanded sidewalk. I can't see how, you know, it's impacted and there's been that much traffic. And so putting the bike lane back to the curb would be helpful. I disagree with some of the points I've heard where people say that the driving lane should be as skinny as possible. I think that if we were to try to emulate how Bleecker Street allows for certain cars to pull around, I think the skinny lane that's currently used for driving is actually more dangerous for everybody involved. The drivers, the people who are trying to cross between cars, there's zero visibility. And I think that having no maneuverability has caused a dangerous situation. The thing that I think has impacted the most is not necessarily the light, but it's the speed bump. When the light is green, people are going to zoom as fast as they can. The speed bump is what's been preventing people and breaking up the old drag racing that, you know, would take place when the light would turn green at Mercer. And so, if anything, you know, if you replace the light with a stop sign and a speed bump and just had, you know, enough rules about you have to let pedestrians in the crosswalk cross, we have the light, so we might as well keep it. But if there's any impact that would have the most impact is add a second speed bump closer to the entrance of building 2 so that it would really cause cars to slow down. But I think we should go back to having a lot more space of driving capability. You have a ton of moving trucks, unloading vans, people, you know, stopping to look for things, and it just causes a dangerous situation. So my preference would be moving the bike lane back to the curb, having one parking along that southern route, and then having, I guess, a space and 3/4 or 2 spaces of driving so that people could do things there. They could stop to park, stop to drop somebody off, Uber service, doing whatever they're going to do, and then not worry that people are going to speed because we have a speed bump there. And if you light it up and have enough paint on it, you're going to get people who will, you know, realize that you can't go through there at 25 miles per hour. You got to slow down because the speed bump will send you or jettison you off into space. So
Yeah. I think when people were talking about keeping one lane of traffic, it would also be adding dedicated space for drop-offs, for delivery trucks, for loading and unloading zones. Because right now, if you want to do that, you're blocking traffic. So it would be a space just to do that. With some of the extra space and sort of addressing the concerns you have now. Because right now, if somebody drops anything off or there's a truck, you basically back up traffic all the way to Mercer Street and sometimes beyond.
Yep, and people opening up doors, there's just no room to give any space. Bleecker Street works. Bleecker is wide enough to handle cars passing other cars if they're stopped. And so I would like to see that street go back to having more space. I personally think it's more dangerous, even if you're crawling at a slower speed, it's still more dangerous for everybody, the drivers, the pedestrians who are sneaking between the cars. Now, the one other thing that just is really difficult is leaving the Washington Square Village complex. You can't see anything. You just, it's a completely dangerous. I have no idea whether a taxi is coming at full speed, and for whatever reason, people parking on that middle parking row, they end up having their end stick out so that you can't make the turn. There's just no way sometimes, you know, like it's impossible. So going back to more wider driving area and having the bike lane brought to the curb, I think would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have anyone else from the public who would like to comment? Because we do have a number of people on. Mia Chiaffi, we're gonna promote you. Okay.
Hi, sorry, it's a whole process.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mia.
Thanks so much for doing this. I just wanted to also put my own experience in there. On December 18th, 2024, I witnessed a horrific hit and run when a police chased a car up the bike lane, hitting a bicyclist going 60 miles an hour towards Mercer Street. It was my birthday, so I remember it very specifically, but it was also a very horrific thing to witness. That bike lane's got to go. It's so dangerous. I think that would help so much. The other improvements, the speed bumps, the light, those are all great, but that corridor, it's like nothing else in the neighborhood. And I think if that were to go tomorrow, that street would be 100% safer. Well, 1,000% safer. It would be night and day, because it's the visibility, it's the speeding, it's the e-bikes. My next door neighbor was hit by an e-bike going down that corridor. It's a freeway in the middle of Lower Manhattan, and it's got to go. So thank you. That's all I'll say.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any other people who would like to speak? Okay. Elias Schultz. Yeah. Always takes a second to promote people.
Oh, I've been promoted. Very fancy.
All right. It's like going
yeah.
through Willy Wonka on the TV or something.
We're talking West 3rd between LaGuardia and Mercer, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely oppose any proposal to remove the bike lane or make things more dangerous for bicyclists. Even when it's one really broad lane, I feel like I'm on my bike, I get chased off the road and honked at, and it's just never a pleasant experience. That's all I have to say. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Elias. Any other comments on West 3rd Street? Okay. Carter?
Yeah, there's one other characteristic that results in a lot of the bike traffic, and that's that Great Jones and West 3rd is one of the only westbound streets. So it gets a higher amount of traffic than people realize because there's no other way to go west. And as a bicyclist, it's very comfortable to go there. But it's interesting hearing all these comments, and I think it's true. It actually becomes a speedway for bicyclists, a lot of the e-bikes, because it's a long, uninterrupted stretch. And I personally notice, so because I ride a pedal bike, but I noticed something very interesting is that everybody stops, or many people stop on the e-bikes at LaGuardia Place, but they run through the mid-block light because it's a little bit of a different condition. And I just go back to the predictability aspect of what we all recognize is city features. And I'm not sure you want to use a block to teach people or have introduce new elements, because there's so many moving parts here that it just becomes less safe. And that just seems to be an overarching element. Is, you know, it's interesting the comments that were just made. I mean, if you're riding west, you're in an unprotected bike lane the whole way, right? From within the CB2 boundaries. Let's say if you come from Bowery and you're going all the way to 6th Avenue, it's unprotected except for this stretch. So it's great that it's safer and it's a protected bike lane, but it's introducing a lot of moving elements that are not all in the same space. And as a pedestrian crossing, you've got to look for the bicyclist, then you get to this middle spot, then you have cars, then you get to cross the street. And so it's a lot of changing elements. So
You have a
just leave it at
suggestion?
that.
Okay.
Well, it keeps, the more and more I think about it, it's like, it's a lot of its visibility. And it's true that Bleecker Street functions much more successfully, even without a light that's crossed. The same people are crossing mid-block over by Morton Williams to go north, and it's much safer. It doesn't feel strange. And I bring that up because that's ultimately there's so many of us that use all of this space regularly, but it doesn't seem to quite work. And I'm not, you know, the changes, it's just not working is number one. But that light, shouldn't we be reinforcing the light so that everybody stops, so that people can cross? The visibility by, I mean, I wish that the walkthrough were in person. I actually walked over there today and did the earlier call in person. And you can see how narrow the space is, the travel lane versus how wide the bike lane is. And it's very confusing to anybody. And that's why people are able to drive down, look for parking, back in. And somebody was trying to dig their car out, you know, that was parked against the curb today while we were doing this. And, you know, and then they couldn't get out because the bike lane was only plowed with the bike lane plow, not, you know, a car width plow. So it's like all these interesting conditions, but it's really a more heavily used street. It has institutional uses. It just doesn't seem practical, the
Okay.
solutions now. So
Okay, thank you. Shirley?
Yeah, I have a question for Carter about the traffic light. Do you think that incorporating a bike stoplight within the traffic light would help? You were talking a lot about the effectiveness of the traffic light with motor vehicles.
I would leave that to DOT to see how much compliance there is with that in this type of situation. I noticed on, like, for example, there's an example of that is at 2nd Avenue southbound at Houston. There is a bike light, but you're going to get run over if you don't comply with it from cars turning left. The light here is just simply to tell you to stop. Right, it's a good reminder, but I just bring that up because it's not like it's because there's two opportunities. So the bike red light would match the car red light, so it's a little different than I think where many of the bike red lights are, because cars turning and then they're not turning, and then the bikes can go straight. So it's a little different use. So I don't know the answer to that, but I'm not sure it would work as well.
Okay, and we had one more comment. Tim Dressler has a second comment.
Tim, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to follow up a second comment about the bike lane, because people are talking about that in the bike light. I'm a city bike user, and I don't think a bike light is going to stop the problem issues, which is the delivery men and other people speeding at full speed. Since I do use City Bike, I can tell you that there's many streets that I come upon that have a speed bump. And I promise you, when I come up to that speed bump, my City Bike slows down to almost nothing because I don't want to go flying off into the blue sky. So I think if you were to redesign the street where you bring the bike lane back to the curb, and you are going to redesign everything, you could easily have a speed bump that runs across the whole street, so that coming up to that building 1 entrance where the light currently is, if you have a speed bump for both cars and bikes, you're going to stop anybody that's coming in at a zooming speed. And I think that that would have a better effect than a light, and just control the speed, which is what you're trying to do.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Dan Miller?
Yeah, it was exactly the point I was gonna make. I was going across 19th Street today, west towards Hudson River Park, and there's 2 or 3 speed bumps on every block, and it really does slow you down as long as it's both vehicular as well as cycle. So that would be a good recommendation in my mind. Thank you.
Okay. That's a great suggestion. Do we have any more attendees who want to say something? Janet, let's go. Oh, Janet, you're muted.
I think we'd have to defer to DOT on that, because when the speed bump is in the road and you're on the roadbed, everybody sees it. But cyclists, because it's very atypical talking about trying to have very consistent treatments, people could get really hurt if they didn't see that, if they were on a bike and didn't notice the bump. I mean, there must be reasons that that's not a common treatment. And I wonder,
Yeah.
rumble strip, or there are other treatments that I think are more common than bumps, because if you miss it, you could get thrown from your bike.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask the same question, Kate. I actually have not seen a bike lane speed bump. I've seen regular speed bumps that I've slowed down for.
No,
Is there
we don't use speed bumps in bike lanes. We've in fact over the years changed the shape and design of our speed bumps because of instances where some of the older ones are so large that they will knock a cyclist down when they go over it. But we would typically use rumble strips in a bike lane, so that's a texture, that it does what it sounds like, rumble, so it forces the cyclist to slow down.
Got it. Do you have any suggestion in Lower Manhattan where we could check out a rumble strip maybe after the snow melts?
I would have to check. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 in CB3, but I'll have to double check.
That would be great, because I want to feel it. I want to bike over it and feel it. Janet?
Brooklyn Bridge Park has a bunch.
Oh, okay. I'm probably not biking there this week. But that's good to know. Any more comments? Otherwise, we're going to move to Bleecker Street. So this is a good transition, because some of the people have talked about how they like how Bleecker Street works. We have, there's the Wooster Street crossing and essentially the Greene Street walk. People are constantly jaywalking, which I know is legal, but there's no crosswalks at either of those intersections. And I do know that as a resident, there's a lot more pedestrian traffic because of 181 Mercer. And just wanted to kind of to throw it out there. And there is a bike lane as well, and 1 lane of parking. It's actually cars, bikes, road in that order. And I just wanted to throw it out for discussion about what we can do on Bleecker Street to improve safety. Janet?
Thank you. I go north and south that way 2 or 3 times a week walking. If we have to choose, I would recommend Wooster, because it's preceded by University. You go through University, you cross at that to be consistent where the existing stoplight is. And then I think people would choose their path. Like I would cross there, and then I would go left on Bleecker and go through that new pedestrian zone. But I would vote to mirror the one on 3rd Street if we had to choose one or the other.
Thank you. Any other committee members before we go to the public? Okay. I know there's a lot of super block residents on this call and some people who live on the southern super block. Dr. Smith or others, I don't know if you have any thoughts in terms of a crosswalk at Wooster Street on Bleecker, what would be Wooster Street on Bleecker. Carter?
Yeah, just echoing what Janet said. I mean, that's really the natural place to have it, and how, because of the really nice, the silver towers, you know, walking through there, that's really how that pedestrian space is used. It's also because of the way the Morton Williams is set up with the loading dock and everything. It's just a really good area to put a crosswalk in, because it really, the area already has lent itself to that. The only, if you did it on the western side, which is consistent with the crosswalk on the north side of the super block, if you did it on the western side, on the south side, the only thing it would really interrupt is what we heard earlier from one of the residents, which is a spot that's used regularly by NYU for trash. So it would just be
I'm sorry,
pushing,
what would you say on the southern side? I meant, you said.
on the, where we're talking about, on crossing Bleecker Street, right next to it is the Morton Williams loading dock. So that would be where the crosswalk goes. There's a space there between them. So that's actually a great space. And then on this Washington Square Village side, that first spot is often used for garbage on garbage nights. So taking it away is very unobtrusive.
Yeah. Got it.
To do that there, and it actually kind of, it's not an impact at all. But it's also good for the pedestrians to, as Janet said, just to coming from any direction, that you just know you can go there, easily cross, go north, keep going north, these stoplights. And, you know, I'm not so sure putting in a stop sign there is the greatest idea, but if there were a light there, that wouldn't be the end of the world. I'm not sure if that's necessary, because the light, it's so close to the light at LaGuardia. And I don't know. I don't personally, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of traffic. Maybe other people have other experiences, but when I'm walking there, and I've always walked to the board office, as Janine mentioned, the community board 2 board office is right there. So I think that's a great spot to do that. And I think that, you know, there's a number of places where there should be crosswalks where they're not, and that's definitely one of them.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, do we have any comments from the public? Okay, I just want to go back to one more comment, and it's not quite, it's on the northwest side for at Mercer and West 3rd, where Gristides is. If there's going to be a jazz club there, I guess I defer to Kate. What are some options for creating some, you know, drop-off zones there? And if you want, I can find a picture and pull that up. Let's see.
Sure. We would probably look at installing some kind of, well, I guess it also depends once the club is there and how they operate and what the behavior is generally. At a lot of nightlife venues, we usually install some kind of no parking signage. So something that allows for, you know, the curb to ideally be kept clear so that you can have, you know, cabs, Ubers doing pickups and drop-offs, without people hopefully double parking there. There are other instances of that in CB2. It was depending on what you're interested in. It could be a neighborhood loading zone, which would allow for commercial pickup and drop off, depending on what the needs are, as well as for hire vehicles and regular personal private vehicles would be allowed to quickly use the space to do pickup and drop offs.
Yeah, and here's a picture of literally snapped while crossing the street. Apologies to all the real photographers on this committee. But you can see that there's, you know, frankly, not a lot of space for drop-offs and pickups. So I guess we'll Carter, what's the timing of this opening?
Yeah, I think they're going pretty full steam ahead. What's interesting here is that, you know, we talked about this at the meeting when they came to us. On West 3rd Street on the north side, if just the first 3 spots, which are commercial parking spots from metered commercial parking spots from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then Saturdays, it's just regular car metered parking lots. If those were just made, you know, into some sort of a drop-off zone, those first 3 spots after 6 p.m., I think it would just solve all the issues here, because it just gives enough of a buffer for cars to pull over. On Mercer Street, it's wide enough. It's actually what a lot of people are talking about. They'd like to see on West 3rd, a little wider travel lane. Mercer Street already has that. If a car pulled over, it's still passable. So it's not as impactful. But if you have a pullover on West 3rd on the north side just before Mercer, I think that would work very well for a drop off. I would anticipate that anybody marking to go to that location on any type of, you know, any of the ways or whatever systems, Google Maps, that the for hire drivers are using, they're going to come in off of Broadway or Lafayette, go across Great Jones into West 3rd, and that's where they'd get to the spot if they're coming in. So that's probably the best place to do that. And the entrance from the floor plans that we saw, they're going to be using the corner entrance as the primary ingress and egress for the club. There's some emergency exits further east on West 3rd, but the corner is going to be the main entrance. So it just seems like that would make sense to do it that way.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Any other comments on this? Okay, we're going to move then to the 3rd agenda item, and then when we're done with that, the committee will meet an executive session. The public is welcome to remain, but we'll discuss what we want to propose going forward. I just want to highlight, you know, last November, there's a parking garage on Morton Street between 7th Avenue South and Bleecker Street. And last November, a van was, it's also a rentals place, was leaving that location. And instead of turning right and looping around the block to get on 7th Avenue South, turned left and killed a woman who was crossing in the crosswalk, basically to, you know, eke out onto 7th Avenue South, the quick way. And if, you know, I've been there, others, there's no signage in the parking lot, and there had been no signage on the street. So if you are particularly renting a car and you don't know the neighborhood that well, it's easy to be confused. Councilmember Botcher's office had reached out to the Department of Transportation, and they responded at the end of December, basically sharing that they had an initial examination of the site, and they've installed all traffic right signage for vehicles exiting the garage, and an additional one-way pointing east sign for Morton Street was relocated to be more visible for vehicles exiting the garage. And they've reached out to NYPD to request additional monitoring and traffic enforcement. And I guess I just wanted to, you know, first open it up to Kate and ask if there's anything else planned for this site. And then maybe if Nicole from Councilmember Botcher's office wants to add anything. Kate?
Sure, thank you, Janine. Following all traffic fatalities, DOT, we always conduct a study to determine if there are additional treatments that we can install to improve safety conditions in the area, you know, where the fatality took place. And in this case, you know, following the tragic incident in November, We did install, an all traffic right sign and repositioned a one-way sign so that it's more clearly visible for, vehicles coming out of the garage, as Janine said, so that they know that they have to make that right and they cannot turn left. NYPD has been doing enforcement there as well. They did enforcement in the days following the crash. At this time, I'm not aware of additional treatments planned for this location. But of course, if there are any suggestions, we're happy to take that back and see if there's any additional adjustments we can make.
Okay, fantastic. Nicole, I'm not sure if you are prepared to talk on this. I'm gonna promote you. Nicole Barth is with Councilmember Botcher's office. You're muted still.
We'll try that again. Hi, everybody. Good evening. We were very happy in our office. Eric, it was a horrible tragedy on Morton Street when that woman was crossing, and which could have been prevented. And like Janine said, Eric wrote a letter right away. And I want to just thank Kate and the DOT, who moved very fast on getting the signage up. I mean, I don't think I really can have an opinion on this. The one-way sign, I wish was about twice the size or 2.5 the size that it is. So when you come out of the garage, you can see it. But I think also the garage, after witnessing this horrible accident, I am hoping they're taking precautions as well. But we're very happy with the new signage, and we just want to say thanks to DOT.
Okay. Fantastic. I'm going to promote Perry Vandermeer. And before that, I just want to say that we'll discuss in business session. But in addition to Canal Street, some of CB2's top priorities in terms of redesign are, improvements on Lafayette Street with a two-way bike lane and full redesign on Lafayette Street. I mean, on 7th Avenue South Varick. So Perry, why don't you go ahead?
Hey, thanks everyone. I've lived in the neighborhood for 26 years, and I've been a little obsessed with 7th Avenue South because I've seen so many terrible accidents. I appreciate everything everyone's done. I've always had dogs that I walk on 7th Avenue South. I have seen cars come out of the garage taking a left against the beautiful new sign already. I have not seen any police enforcement. The nature of 7th Avenue South, if you're behind a wheel, is so inviting, and you really want to pull into the center of this big highway that you would never take a right onto a small village street. When that garage was really busy and there was a Hertz there, it was most common to even have the attendants direct you to go to the left because they would have cars parked on the right as you were coming out, and they would use the small street as kind of a car shuffling area, as rental car places do. So the most common interaction for you coming out of that garage, though it's now a kind of ghost garage because they've had a bunch of repairs done and it isn't really very active. I think there is only that one van rental company, but I've seen vans from that rental company pull up, slowly take a left, because it's the most inviting thing to do. And I don't think it's something that the DOT is responsible for. I don't think it's a responsibility of the signage. I think the nature of all the intersections along 7th Avenue South are so inviting to car flow, because that's the way they've been designed, that if you live in the neighborhood and you know the neighborhood, that's the kind of way you go. And I've seen it. I've seen it happen even after the new signs were put up right away. Because I agree with observation that everyone's made here is Eric acted very quickly, the DOT acted very quickly, but the solution is in the creation of avenue shortening pedestrian islands so that you wouldn't be invited to this big street that you see floating there, and that's true for a whole bunch of other intersections. So sorry to be so bleak, but if you come walk the dog with me one day, we stand on the corner across from it on Morton, we'll see cars coming out of the garage making a left turn.
Okay, well, that's good to know. So Kate, are there options to put those, those bendable plastic, what's the correct term, but plastic,
Delineators.
the delineators basically before the crosswalk, because if there's an emergency vehicle that needs to get down, they could just plow them over. But if there were 3 or 4 before the crosswalk, that would be another visual barrier for a driver that they can't go that way.
I can ask if that's something we can consider. In this moment, I'm not sure if that's something, if that would be a standard design practice.
Janet?
Is there any other way to reach the garage though? Because I had a similar thought, just make it sort of a quasi-closed street so that they can't go left. But I'm assuming to reach the garage, you have to, enter that street from that.
No, you have to enter it from the other way because I'm sorry. No, you're right. You have to enter it from, you're right. You enter it from 7th Avenue. Yeah. So that's the problem. You enter that way, but you can't exit. Yeah. Shirley?
Yeah, how much influence can be brought on the garage itself to have some kind of check before anybody who uses the garage exits it?
I don't know.
Law, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna throw out that I wouldn't be surprised if there's some lawsuits there, because I went by right after the accident, and while the signage changes that the city made are good, there's 0 signage inside the garage that says you must turn right.
Yeah.
But I don't know, does DOT have any ability to require anything?
Not that I'm aware, but I can check if there's any city policy that would require such directions be posted. That may be something that has to come from the state or would have to be legislated if it doesn't already exist.
Okay. Well, that's I'll follow up with you on that in a couple days before we finalize our resolution, because it sounds like people just can't help themselves. They want to get to 7th Avenue South as fast as possible and don't want to have to make several turns to go around the block. Do we have any other suggestions for this?
Could we play around with the sight lines? The gentleman was just saying how it's so inviting. It could be possibly, I don't know, think about making it less so. If you expand the bump outs on the crosswalk and some vertical elements, just some kind of
I think, yeah, if you would like to include that in the resolution, that's certainly something that we could look into.
Yeah, and I love all these. I'm also just thinking something that can be faster. Okay. Nicole, have there been any other suggestions that have gone to Councilmember Botcher's office? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Well, actually, Perry Vandermeer is, as he said, he's been quote somewhat obsessed with 7th Avenue South for years. We've talked a lot with him. We've talked to, West Village Bid has been talking about a redesign. I think that specifically though for that corner, no.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really people who want to take a left there are going to take a left there. And it's a hard corner to enforce. You're not going to be able to put unless there were a police camera or something, you're not really going to be able, perhaps that's the answer, like that there's going to be a traffic camera there or something that records it and you get a ticket. I don't know, but we have not had additional suggestions. But I think, the signage is a good first step, but maybe consider a camera or something. It's frustrating that the garage after this happening isn't cooperating a little bit more by putting some really big signs inside the garage.
Just with regard to the camera comment, so DOT, we have speed and red light cameras that we operate through authorization through the state. We don't currently have a mechanism to enforce other traffic violations with our camera systems, and to do that, that would have to go through the state first for us to be able to do that.
Okay.
Thanks, Kate. That's probably why no one suggested it. But I don't know. We'll see what happens next. There are a lot of people talking about 7th Avenue South, so we'll see.
Okay. Last chance for comments. Okay, we are going to go into executive session. Public is welcome to stay, but you will be listening only. Thank you for your participation. I'm going to start with 3rd Street. We sort of is like, do you stick with the current plan or do you redesign it? And I'm just going to open with, I would love, there's not a lot of, everything there other than the speed bumps and the stoplight, and the crosswalk, which are already good and solid. All the other changes were mostly involved paint and some movable granite bollards and movable things or paint. And I think there's a lot of beautiful open spaces on the 2 super blocks. I would be more inclined to have a double wide protected bike lane and use the extra space for really addressing some of the micromobility issues in terms of moving trucks, delivery trucks, micro hubs, and drop-offs, and then have the parking. But that's my thought. I'm going to open it up, raise your hand, and we'll go call on people. Shirley?
I seem to have a lot to say about this. Sorry. First of all, with the speed humps, I just want to bring to people's attention that when speed humps originally were recommended, there was a lot of opposition because West 3rd Street, as we all know, is also a place for emergency vehicles going by. And so there was that fear that emergency vehicles, fire trucks, ambulances would be slowed down. I'm just introducing that, maybe weighed against what good speed humps would do, obviates that. But I did want to bring that to people's attention as part of the history.
So I just want to clarify. So with the smaller speed bumps that we have now versus the bigger ones, that doesn't seem to be an issue.
It was speed humps in general.
Yeah, just the concept of them, but
the concern of slowing down emergency vehicles.
Okay.
Was something that had been brought up, whether that's in the long run applicable or not.
Well, we haven't heard anything, so I'm going to say no.
So the other thing that was not discussed was actual signage and any kind of regulations, which I know we had discussed this afternoon and certainly in the past has been approached too. One of the things that was brought up this afternoon, for instance, was that for years and years we could not change any regulation on the north side of the street because there was NYU construction going on. And this afternoon we found out the construction is completed. So I think that needs some looking into. Originally, I think it had been suggested that that would be an area where for pickup and drop off, for delivery, garbage collection, etc. So that's another aspect that probably should be included in any kind of planning.
Let me just clarify on that because obviously for drop-offs and stuff, but the bulk of the residential population lives on the south side of the street. So
Yeah, I guess I'm talking about deliveries in general. There was, I guess the need was more for NYU than anything else, but there was also deliveries that might go to Washington Square Village. That's the way it was framed.
yeah, well, for deliveries that are short, a delivery truck can pull in and stay there for 20 minutes. It's the larger moving trucks and bigger things that are, and a moving truck is still going to want to park on the south side closer to the residential buildings. And then NYU needs more space for the BOPS library loading dock.
Well, the loading dock, but at the time that we were originally discussing this, there was that need expressed for the delivery truck to be accommodated. And the north side seemed the better place. So if you're considering having a curbside bicycle lane, then that is something that still needs to be considered. Where do you accommodate the deliveries?
Yeah. So let me ask the question. We'll break this out into, there was one person who suggested a bike lane on the north side. Just want to point out that the bike lane before Mercer Street is on the south side, and the bike lane after LaGuardia Place is also on the south side. So it gets a little, I just want to throw that out for discussion in terms of preference for bike lane, north or south.
I would vote that one down because of exactly the reasons that you just said. You know, and the whole point of relooking at this is consistency and simplicity.
Yep.
And make things very complicated.
Okay.
And also there's a loading zone up by NYU, and then they would take up the bike lane on the north
Yeah.
side.
Got it.
That just really seems like a classic solve one problem, create another
Yeah.
situation.
Okay. So we're okay. So I think we're in agreement that bike lane on the south side.
Yep.
And what's our thoughts about keeping or getting rid of the extended sidewalk?
Yes.
Get rid of it? Okay.
I mean, I support what you recommended, that we explore a curbside bike lane with all the other things that you mentioned. And
including a double wide?
the wider bike lane, and then the opportunity to create, use that buffer for a lot of new uses, such as maybe creating a micro delivery hub.
Yeah.
And then just second, Shirley's comment that we should take a close look, of course, on all the parking issues around here.
Okay.
And then there are little details, I don't know, when you write the reso to add in, but such as whatever the width of the bike lane is, we need some sort of vertical element at the beginning of it so cars don't drive down it.
What are the options, Kate, for vertical elements for bike lanes?
Typically flexible delineators are the vertical element we use to protect bike lanes.
Okay.
And we're also thinking for access, because we don't want cars driving down it. So if it were, okay.
Okay. Stella?
I have a question, Janine, just to clarify. So the double bike lane, this is the south side, double bike lane, drop off, mobility hub, and then travel lane, parking lane, like that would,
Yeah,
the parking lane would be gone.
Yes. So instead of the floating parking lane, I'm thinking double bike lane with protection, planters and so forth. And then you have these mobility hubs. So you can't, you can't expand the drop off and mobility hubs into the bike lane because it's protected. And those would need to have some very clear signage and delineation. And then you would have, you know, the same parking lane. Then you would have the parking after, where would the
Yeah.
park?
So the
You
parking
can't-
would be more or less where it exists now, maybe some minor adjustment. And
Yeah.
what we're playing with is the space that's currently sidewalk and bike lane.
Yeah, but you would need to have access to it for,
Right. That's what
you
I
need
was
to be able to drive into it.
Right, so there can't be a parking lane with,
Blocking.
yeah, with like the drop off lane or micro mobility hub to the south of the parking lane.
But
Yeah.
actually you could, because the parking lane, you could designate a piece of the parking lane for the box car, the box van or whatever it is that then unloads into the buffer.
Yeah.
So you would designate part of the existing parking lane for drop, basically freight, drop off and pickup stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, the van that would be unloading into the micro mobility would be in that parking lane.
Yep.
Right.
And then we could also move city bike rack. I love the idea of the one resident who said to put the movable bike rack that's not always full close to the Washington Square Village 2 entrance, because it's a see-through. Essentially, it provides more visibility and keeps the bike rack. Carter?
Yeah, I'm not so sure that putting more active uses in the middle is a great idea.
And what do you mean
Because
by
that-
active uses?
Like having loading, like micro mobility and stuff that's happening every day, because it's such a wide street. It's all this activity that's making it not so safe. I think that micro mobility type of stuff should be up against a curb, not
Well, I
in
just
the
want
middle.
to say, I want to clarify, by micromobility, I'm referring to e-bikes and e-delivery. What's the term for those Amazon trucks, Kate?
So the larger bikes are called cargo bikes, but I think you're also talking about DOT's micro hub pilot program,
Right.
where we're designating curb space and off-street locations specifically for companies to obtain a license so that they can use the space to unload their goods onto low emission vehicles, whether it's cargo bikes or hand trucks. If that's something you're suggesting for this block, I think our concern would be that you already have the truck activity from NYU that is, needs to be addressed first, before I think adding additional trucks on this block. But if you decide that's, we're open to suggestions of other locations.
But not this one, is what you're saying.
You
So
could
in term-
include it and we would look at it, but I'm saying it may not be the best fit.
Well, that's good. So in terms of excessive, dropping off, a rideshare drop off, they can actually turn in. So we actually wouldn't need that. It's really for, basically we'd probably need to have a loading zone on the block, essentially and remove a parking space and create a loading zone, whether that's for a moving truck or something else.
Yeah, and Janine, I just wanted to finish up. So it's like the activity of just unpredictable stuff on such a wide street is a big part of the safety function. And so a high use in the middle, like a high volume use of people walking or whatever in the middle of the street, I don't think that's a great idea. It's just introducing some other complication. And the truck loading zone, it might make sense that if the bike lane swung out away from the curb for some part, maybe over by where NYU has their loading dock, that you could have some sort of a truck you could treat that area separately and incorporate some loading zones, the backing in the trucks, all into an area, because if you're moving people across a bike lane and all that stuff coming out of a truck, that's just, again, it's like a lot of activity. And, and I know you see this on Lafayette Street, if you've got a high volume use of going across the bike lane, it gets very complicated very quickly. And
Well, that's why I was thinking that the bike lane is on the curb, because if the reality is there's moving trucks there once a month, every month. So the question is, if there are moving trucks on 3rd Street, where should they go?
Should maybe the moving trucks go and be put on Bleecker Street? Is that maybe the better use where they're up against the curb?
Yeah,
I'm
but
just
the
saying that's where they're up
I'm
against
just
the
going to
curb.
say that there's going to be moving trucks on Bleecker Street for Washington Square Village 1 and 3, as well as, and there's going to be moving trucks on West 3rd Street for Washington Square Village 3 and 4. I can't imagine a situation where somebody's is want to pay extra for somebody to walk all the way from Bleecker through there to go. I mean, and just the reality is there's 4 buildings there, 2 on the south side and 2 on the north side. And I think realistically, that's, nobody's want to pay extra for the man hours or the woman hours to walk their stuff an extra block one way or another.
Yeah, I guess it's just 2 days a month that you're talking about, or a few days a month. And I'm just sort of thinking of the everyday activity on the block. And that's what I was saying, is that doesn't seem to be planned for the everyday use.
Yeah.
And if people are just going to double park anyway, whether that's cars or whatever, if the travel lane is a little wider, it doesn't stop everything up. And that is what one of the residents was talking about, where Bleecker Street works. Even though it's a single lane of traffic, it still works because there's a little bit of extra elbow room that things can still move around. And just given the nature of here with these big trucks, that extra elbow room creates better sight lines. It creates a little bit of movement space. It's a very predictable space if you're crossing, that you can see where the cars are all coming, where the cars are supposed to be. And it's, I don't know,
let me reach out to NYU, because the reality is one simple solution is that, you get like a special placard on moving day and you can pull your moving truck into the pathways between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Because right now it's limited to 20 minutes, but maybe that's an easy fix, and that's an NYU. NYU owns those super blocks, so maybe that's a fix. Shirley?
Again, I first of all, yes, that one resident who made the reference to the city bike rack made it very clear that very few bikes use the rack. So I think, Kate, I just wanted to say that to you, that I know one of the things you were considering was possibly installing another city bike rack on the south side. And from what she said, there really isn't a need for it. So that was just.
Well, there's 2. The bike rack that's not used is a regular bike rack for bikes that people own. The city bike rack, I'm not sure it would be an additional one or a larger one that's on LaGuardia Place, just south of West 3rd. I do know in good weather, it's often really difficult to find an open dock there. So it wouldn't be unreasonable to.
Oh, okay, so I misunderstood.
Yeah,
but
there's
anyhow,
2 parts to it.
We're talking about alternative uses of that south curb, which probably would obviate a city bike dock. Anyhow, but I did want to point out something that was in one of our original resolutions in 2022, in terms of protecting the bike lanes, and it was called the Better Barriers Program. Kate, you aware of that? And so it says low barricades of harder, stronger materials than the flimsy plastic ones, and can be as the delineators, and can be installed quickly. And there are a variety that have been tried out, such as curb height blocks, wave delineators, and armadillo-shaped speed bumps that could provide the needed protection to the exposed parts of the bike lane. And so I would maybe suggest us putting that in as one recommendation as to.
Kate, are those being used now?
Yeah, I've seen the armadillo ones on.
What does it look like? I don't know what it
Um,
means. I'm picturing the animal.
Looks like almost like a little, like a turtle shell barrier. There's actually one on the east. There's not just one, there are on the east side of Union Square,
Right.
by 15th Street. We have some. So, that was a pilot program in 2022. It wasn't as expanded as widely as I think people would have hoped. I think right now we're trying to go back to that and see if there are other options for barriers that we can use to protect bike lanes. Right now, the most common fixture is the flexible delineator. But again, if there are other options, then that's something we can explore as well.
Okay.
Okay, so that might be something we would want you to explore, those options, similar to the Better Barriers program.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
the armadillos did work well on Union Square, from what I recall.
Yeah. Okay. And then Janet?
So Kate, I mean, you can hear, there is a group of us who think to flip the bike lane and do a more traditional bike lane with some sort of buffer, either a wide buffer like on Lafayette, or maybe put city bikes in there. Do you have any opinion on that? Like, because the sidewalk is wide enough as is?
Yeah, I think, we're getting a lot of, valid concerns from all of you and the people who live in the area, as well as NYU and NYPD. That merits us taking another look at this block to see if there's something we can do here better. And if we're able to do anything in the interim, like perhaps installing objects in the painted parking spaces to deter, or in the painted pedestrian space where cars are illegally parking. That's something we're happy to look at. In the interim, I can't commit right now to what a timeline would look like for developing a new proposal for this block. Right now, at this point in the year, is when we're starting to put together our projects for the spring and summer season implementation. And a lot of our work is dependent on the resurfacing schedule, as well as contracting capacity. So this is something we'll bring to our bikes teams and our public realms teams to take a look at. And I think there's merit to the concerns here. And we'll see if we're able to come back with a proposal.
Great.
Does
I
it-
just want to sort of what you said. I would prefer, I mean, I don't know if it would work, but just a granite block at sort of the beginning, middle, and end or something. I wouldn't want a lot of planters in the painted area if that's an interim solution, because then it might become a permanent solution. That's just my fear. Janet, did you have more thoughts on that?
No, I was just saying it sounds as if, so on our resolution, we should have kind of two parts. There's a desire to have the street to be relooked at and redesigned, but in the interim to make recommendations that are easier.
Yeah. Okay. Carter?
Yeah, when I was actually on the block today, I think the interim solutions, we should do a physical walkthrough, because when everybody here is talking about a lot of ideas, that you cannot, it's very hard to blame drivers for parking there right now if you walk down there. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense at all, like the way it's set up. And the parking signs are all along the curb like they normally are, anywhere else in the city. And, anything temporary would be striping, as Detective Can had suggested. But it doesn't make a lot of sense what's there. It's not what you see anywhere else. It's very unusual. And I think that's a big part of the issue. So striping it really seem just putting stuff there, people will park in between it. I mean, it's because the signage is really, it looks like it's for the curb. And so the striping is really I think a main thing if there is some deterrent, but then that seems like more of a permanent solution as well. And I don't know if that's a great solution. It's very hard, but if you go doing a walkthrough might elicit some more ideas and some creativity, because it's not what you think it is. And when I was walking there today and everybody was talking, you really just have to see the on-site and everybody together and just sort of look at it. So it's a little more complicated, I guess, is what I'm saying. If there's a short-term solution, and there might be some ideas if some people are all together coming up with stuff. I think just, coming up with things now at the meeting isn't a great way to actually get this done. I think that getting some of the various folks on the ground and doing a walkthrough is the way.
I'm happy to do a walkthrough with a subset once the weather's a little bit better, but I do want to make sure we have a resolution for our February board meeting. So I'm happy to follow up and with this committee and see what we can do.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting, what I'm suggesting is put that in the reso, that there be a follow-up with DOT about determining what a short-term solution would be to discourage parking in what's the extension space. I don't know, I mean, that's the same thing in finding a solution. We don't have to prescribe the solution for that. It's just the end goal, which is cars not
I
parking.
just don't want to put, I like a short-term solution that's not too permanent, not too expensive, because I would hate to that just be the end.
And you can put that right in there. I think that's just allows the room for that. But I think DOT also, what we heard, maybe doesn't have the extensive budgeting. We heard today earlier at the meeting that the people who would fund a lot of that stuff are often the city council members and not the DOT. And I'm not sure why the city council member would fund a short-term stopgap. So that's why I think it takes a little bit more getting people together and come up with some solutions that fit that criteria.
Sounds great. Do we have any more comments on a 3rd Street? Okay. Moving to Bleecker Street. I think the question is, do we want any speed bumps? Do we want a crosswalk? I heard when we were talking that there was consensus for a crosswalk at Wooster Street. Is there any consensus for anything else? Okay, I am not seeing any hands. I'm thinking this would go all in the same resolution because it's the same super block. Any other last minute comments on Bleecker Street? Okay, so now we're going to move to Morton Street between 7th Avenue and Bleecker. And I think that, I think what we heard is, we need a 7th Avenue redesign. We need to figure out, the cars are still turning left. So Kate, why don't we follow up with you to see what are the options? We know we can't do, there's no camera for illegal left turns. I guess maybe
A visual element, something that
the additional visual elements.
sight lines onto 7th Avenue.
Yeah. Okay. And Kate, we can follow up with you on that to see what other options there might be in the DOT toolbox, if any. Because we definitely want to, it's still happening and we need to make it safer. And let's just take a vote on, and then I'll write up a resolution and share it with people for the super blocks on West 3rd Street. The preference is to have a full redesign where you have a traditional bike lane, but wider on the south side, getting rid of the extended sidewalk, have a buffer of some kind, whether it's the but it's not anteaters, what's the armadillos? There are some other things, I'll use that language. And removing the parking spots to add additional visibility at the two intersections, and addressing some, asking DOT for a walkthrough for short-term solutions that would not be so expensive or complicated as to preclude a much better shorter term, medium term solution. I don't want to say long term, because this is the design is just so bad. We want to, the unintended consequences of the design are something we really want to fix for our community. I don't think we heard from anyone who says keep it the way it is. And adding a crosswalk on Bleecker between Wooster, where Wooster Street is, crossing the intersection. All those in favor? Say aye. Okay, anyone opposed? Any recusals? Fantastic.
Add one little comment that's a
Yep.
whatever. Under the short-term solution, it would be short-term would be looking at the parking regs on the parking
Yes, you're right.
parking lanes. That could, yeah, that's
Got
it.
it. And then in terms of getting, Kate, is it possible to get rid of a parking spot right away at Washington Square Village 2, on either sides of the entrance of 2, either sides of the entrance at 4, and the location where NYU needs to have the delivery trucks pull into their entrance? I mean, that would just be Xing out.
Right. So for the around the entrance to 2, that would likely be changes to the parking signage, but seeing as the parking signage is not being followed as it is, we may have to look at changing the street markings and adding channelization potentially. And
Adding,
then
what's the term you use?
channelization.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Zebra stripes. And we would also have to install, we have to look at installing the markings across from NYU's loading zone.
Yeah, okay. Fantastic. All righty. And then for Morton Street is really adding visual elements. And I'd like to follow up with Kate to see what visual elements are in the DOT toolbox. But assuming there are some, does the committee support adding additional visual elements? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any recusals or abstentions? No. And the last thing in business session, I just want to touch on, there is, in terms of future meetings, Kate and I spoke briefly earlier today. Canal Street redesign probably come back in at our March meeting. And I think at some point we want to discuss what we can do on 7th Avenue South, possibly at our next meeting. And Kate, you said that in the works is some changes for Lafayette Street. So those are the Lafayette is a relatively recent resolution. Would it make, should we just wait for what DOT is going to present, or does it make sense to reconvene on that?
I think hold off for now. We're developing a proposal that I think we're hoping to bring to you this year with some changes on Lafayette Street. But we're still developing and fine tuning that. So we wouldn't want to discuss the details.
Yeah, and I don't think we have any new ideas. I mean, we're pretty clear about what we needed. So, and you have our resolutions on that?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. With 2. Okay. Any other new business to discuss? Okay. Kate, you had also shared that we had there was a proposal for NYU to add additional stops on their shuttle bus throughout various locations in Community Board 2. We haven't had a public hearing on that. When would require, when would we need to have a comment to by them?
So the letter was sent in early December, and it is 45 days the community board has to comment.
So
If,
we've already passed that time.
yeah.
Okay.
I can check if we're able to extend it for you all, and let you know.
Okay, thank you. If you could do that, and I'll follow up with you. Any other burning issues from our committee? All right. It's 8:12. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
A second? All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for all the committee members, especially who were on 2 calls today. Really appreciate it. And Mark, thanks for hooking us up on 100% virtual. So, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a
Good
good
meeting.
evening,
Thanks.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Good
Thanks,
night.
Janine. Thank you. Bye-bye. Good night, everybody.